Hey, this is Paul, aka the Grind Lord, and here is something that I'm going to start doing. It's called Grindcore Essentials. And what I mean by Grindcore Essentials is usually some people like to pick albums by bands and say, like, oh, this is essential for the genre. You know, you need to listen to this to understand the genre. But I can't necessarily pick specific albums, so I'm just going to use this to focus on a specific band that has done amazing things for the genre. So the first band I would like to talk about, obviously you've read the title, so you know it's no other than Pig Destroyer. So let's start it. Pig Destroyer was started in the late '90s by Scott Hall, and one of the first things they did was they recorded an album called Explosions from Ward 8, and then they had splits, EPs, things like that, and then they compiled them on their first relapse release on something called 38 Counts of Battery. Now this is pretty cool because it's got their first album in this, and it's got all the stuff from the EPs and splits that they were doing at the time. So this technically is their first album, and Relapse reissued these a few years ago, and I got myself a copy because I didn't own it. But if you want to this is raw grindcore, basically. There's nothing really that special about Explosions from Ward 8. It wasn't that great of a release. It wasn't well received at the time, but what was pretty cool about it was it was baseless grind, and they were just kind of getting their names out there, still kind of working out the kinks, because Scott Hall, he was doing Agoraphobic Nosebleed. He said Pig Destroyer was really just the side project. Well, now we know that Pig Destroyer is kind of taking over Agoraphobic Nosebleed, but it's still pretty cool to have something like this. But a few years later, they would come out and release what pretty much everybody thinks, and what I would also think as well, as their best album, and that is Prowler in the Yard. And this is from 2001. Same thing. Relapse reissued these. I want to say it was like the 20th anniversary, maybe 25th anniversary. I think it was 25th anniversary. But it's nicely remixed, remastered, and it's got a nice beer splatter vinyl. But there's really not much I can say that hasn't already been said about Prowler in the Yard, except it's obviously one of my favorites of the genre, and it's a creepy ass album. If you start this album and you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, good luck to you. The second the intro track Jennifer hits, you are, quite honestly, you're going to be shocked, you're going to be aroused. It's really something, and it still creeps my wife out to this day. Very similar to what I just reviewed about Wormrot's Hiss. Every track on here, it's got its own identity. But the one thing I do have to complain about the reissues of these, they cut out a track on here. They cut out Evacuating Heaven and replaced it with an unreleased untitled track, which doesn't really add anything, but it's cool to have like a bonus track that was never meant to be heard. So this is pretty cool, and if you ever get into a specific band in grindcore, this would be a band to get into at first, and this is the album where I would really start with on Pig Destroyer. Now, next would be their follow-up, and I'm not sure if Papa YouTube's gonna have a problem with this, but whatever. This is their follow-up called Terrifier. It's from 2004, and it's very much in the same boat as Prowler in the Yard. I wouldn't say it's unsettling, but it's definitely very much unbridled rage on this album, and it's very they went from quite a raw recording. I believe Prowler was done with an 8-track recorder, and you can tell this is actually studio. It's quite nice recording, and it's just something about this. It's really good. Relapse issued this last year. I picked myself up a copy. Oh no, my wife actually got this for me. So you can tell how much she loves me. She would get me a album with boobies on the front. But man, Thumbsucker, Grave Dancer, Carrion Fairy, Terrifier, like these are all great tracks, and some of these are still in their live set to this day. A lot of people argue with this or Prowler as their essential album. Obviously, if you have to argue that, you shouldn't even be a fan of Grindcore, to be honest, man. It's Prowler, hands down, but this is a very close second. And now we get into the release that everybody likes to argue about, Phantom Limb. Phantom Limb came out in 2007, I believe, and this one had really split the fans of the Pig Destroyer camp. This was their last one with their drummer, their longtime drummer at the time. It's a 21st anniversary edition. It's kind of experimental. There's definitely some sludgy elements to it, as you can tell, because you had John from Baroness do the cover of this, do the artwork. Quite awesome. So to get a guy like that, you should probably have some sludgy elements to your music, and that's what they kind of did with this, and it split apart the fan base. They had longer songs on here, like reaching, like some of them were like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but then you still had the grind elements, and it was polished. It was a really weird mix, but I very much enjoy this. I don't think it's their best, but it was a nice change of pace at the time, and it's a welcome part of their discography. And I think if you really like things like Soylent Green, I think you would very much enjoy this album. Next would be one that kind of put them back on the map as rage-inducing grind, and that would be Book Burner from 2011. Now, there was a release in between Phantom Limb and this one called it's an EP named Natasha. It's a 30-minute song, just a 30-minute doom and sludge song, and I do not own that. I like it, I love it, but I just don't own it because it's very hard to find a copy of it. But after that came 2012's Book Burner. This is ferocious. This is very much Pig Destroyer of old, but it's just more polished. They're better at their instruments, and they themselves just got better at what exactly they were doing. So if you get a chance, I'd say, if you're not a fan of like the raw stuff from the beginning, go a little bit more polished, then check out Book Burner. Book Burner will definitely do that for you. And now we have Mass and Volume. This is an EP. This is only 2 tracks. It's 26 minutes long. The first track, Mass and Volume, the title track, is like 18 minutes, I believe, and the second track, Red Tar, is about 6 or 8 minutes in between there. This is very much the same thing as Natasha, and I believe it was recorded around the same time. It's very much doom and sludge related. So Pig Destroyer likes to have these little outings every once in a while where they just, completely change the genre and go doom and sludge for a while. And this was one of those releases. It's very much experimental, and it's just a little teaser. I believe this came out in 2014. Yep, 2014. So it was just kind of to tide people over until their next album. Now, their next album is quite possibly one of my favorites, not because, it's grindcore. I would say this album very much defies that label. This is 2018's Head Cage 2018. Yep, 2018's Head Cage. This also polarizing release. It's not as grindy as all their fans would want it to be. And I, as a Pig Destroyer fan, I don't necessarily need, them to be straight up grindcore every single release. I need it every once in a while because they're very good at what they do, and you kind of miss it when they do hit it. But there are tracks on here that are straight up grindcore, and you still appreciate it. But they also go into different territories. They get into hardcore. There's definitely some death metal style riffing in here. It moves around more punk music. But dude, this is their first album with bass, and it's awesome. I love it. The song Mount Skull, it's pretty sweet because that's the song that they chose to make a music video out of, and it's quite a ripoff of Tony Hawk Pro Skater, kind of a nod to that, or if you ever catch it. But that was the one song on here that was very much grindcore, and the rest of it's kind of it's still Pig Destroyer, but it's just not grindcore, and that's just what a lot of people just didn't like about it. I personally loved it, and I personally loved the fuck you in the beginning of it, of how abrasive this album really is. It gives you a little warning, and then it just fucks with you by blaring a whole bunch of annoying sounds at you and alarms. And then at the end of the album, beginning, it's still the intro, they play a little snippet of a song that was very popular because of The Shining, the 1980 Shining from Kubrick. And they play a little snippet of that song, and it kind of goes, oh, that's a nice little nod, and then fuck you to your ears. So this one, really cool. I enjoyed it. It was, I believe, Album of the Year for me in 2018. And this one, the artwork's very dark. I don't like how this, how they pressed this, at least the jacket. But this is their live album. This is Pornographers of Sound. It's their live album that came out, I believe, 2020 or 2021? 2021. And this is the only pressing of it. But this is a pretty cool album. This has been my favorite live album I've ever heard, just because it really makes you feel like you're a part of the crowd. It makes you feel like you're actually there. And then when you listen to it, you feel like you're at a show. I live in a suburb of Chicago, so I necessarily don't ever get to see Pig Destroyer ever. They don't ever really come to the Midwest that often. So, with a job and with kids, I necessarily don't get to go out to concerts that much, and usually when Pig Destroyer does play, I always have to miss it for some reason. But it's really cool to have something like this, so when I do get that feeling like, I really wish I could see Pig Destroyer live, pop this on, I feel like I'm there. And it's got stuff from all of their albums. And then a really cool thing they do is they play everything post Prowler first. And then towards the end, they just have this little pocket of nothing but Prowler in the Yard songs. And it's really cool to close out a show like that. So I very much love this. There's another EP I currently don't own. I believe it's called the Octagonal Stairway. That one was a 2020 release. It's all like B-sides and stuff that just didn't make the cut for Head Cage. I like it. I just don't own a copy of it because when it did get pressed, I was working so much. I never just had a chance to pre-order it, and I believe my wife was pregnant at the time, so I was still saving money, so I just opted not to buy it. I will eventually get a copy of it, just never got a chance to. But that EP is pretty cool as well. So this has been Paul the Grind Lord. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, comment, do whatever the hell you want to do. And please listen to Pig Destroyer. You really enjoy it. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.